Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Basketball Conference, the ACC Football Podcast. My name's Joey Weaver. He's Mike McDaniel. Mike, championship weekend. We made it. I think we somewhat got to the place that we thought we might get to, at least on a certain level. How are you? You ready to talk about the final game of the ACC's pre-bowl season?
This isn't Clemson, Florida State.
It is Florida State.
It is Florida State, barely.
And we did float even back in the summer that, you know, there might be something in Louisville 10-1 to win the conference. I remember that. But, yeah.
Not under these circumstances, right?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Mike, we are back. We're here to preview the conference championship game Saturday night in Charlotte. But before we do, we've got some news we got to catch up on over the last few days that this is always a very newsy time of the year, coming out of the final weekend of the regular season. So a few things to catch up on. Before we do that, just a reminder, if you're watching us right now, youtube.com/@the-ACC Football Podcast. First off, thank you. Thank you for joining us in the comments. I see we got Alexis Solaris already in there. So thank you to the folks joining us and joining in the conversation. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon for more if you have not yet so far. We appreciate that. Hit the like button. That would also be very appreciated and very helpful from you. The folks that have been watching us this year have done a phenomenal job helping us out with the subscribe button, that like button. So please keep that up. That much appreciated. Find someone else's account, find someone else's phone if you have to. But thank you so much to the people who have been helping us out.
Big time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Mike, let's jump in. First off, we have some coaching changes news that we need to talk about. Do we talk about the hiring or the departure first?
Let's do the departure first.
Let's do the departure. So we found out, Mike, on Sunday, I think it was Sunday, and I think that the intro press conference was on Monday, that Mike Elko, Duke's head coach the last couple of years, former Texas A&M defensive coordinator, is going to be heading back to College Station, taking over for Jimbo Fisher, who was fired a few weeks ago. And it was interesting kind of the way that it happened as we were mid-podcast Saturday night doing the Saturday Night Fever. The suspicion through the day had been building, and it was like borderline confirmed before we went live that Mark Stoops was going to be taking that job, Kentucky's head coach.
Yeah.
And then it was mid-podcast we found out, seems like that might not really be happening. And then, Mike, there was an important piece of reporting that came out that I feel like we need to share with the people, and it sounded a little bit something like this. Is Mike Elko the head coach at Duke next year?
Yes.
I think so.
But if A&M fans didn't like the prospect of a Mark Stoops hire, by the way, old defensive coordinator at Florida State, and a good one. If they didn't like the idea of that hire, they going to love the Mike Elko hire?
Let nobody tell you that people do not come to this podcast for the most up-to-date, accurate, perfect information out there.
Listen, if you had told me straight up, Mark Stoops wasn't a candidate, and Elko was one of like 2 or 3 in the mix, our take would have been Elko was the defensive coordinator. It makes sense that he's in the mix. I think A&M fans will like the hire. The reason why our take was what it was is because Stoops, I think, has Stoops has a longer track record of success as a head coach of Power 5 football at a very, very tough school to win football games at, right? It's a basketball school at Kentucky. They are constrained in terms of football resources, and Stoops has done a pretty nice job there, repeatedly getting them to bowl eligibility, and in a lot of years having them be a top 25 program, right? The fact that A&M fans did not like that hire, and the part of the soundbite that was clipped, obviously, was the part where we also talked about how A&M fans are psychotic, which I stand by, 1,000%.
Did you see the video from the intro press conference?
Yes. Yes, I did.
singing the fight song, doing the saw 'em off, like, swinging thing. There is one school in the country, Mike, that would do that at a coach's introductory press conference, and you saw it in College Station on Monday.
It's Texas A&M.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think our take would have been different if they weren't backing off of one guy to the next one. They weren't like, they weren't having, one guy show up and essentially be hired and then at the 11th hour nixing it. I mean, it was very Tennessee-like in terms of what Tennessee did with Schiano prior to hiring Pruitt. It had that kind of feel to it, which is dumb because Stoops is a really good coach. I think actually Stoops would have done a really nice job there at Texas A&M. I also think Elko's probably going to do a good job at A&M. So I am not surprised, knowing what we know now, 72 plus hours later, that Elko left, and Elko's now the coach at A&M. It is not surprising to me. The minute I heard that he was one of the candidates they were zeroing in on, I was like, he's gone. Well, again, A&M is a really good job because if you don't succeed and you get fired, it's generational wealth. Perfect. Sign me up. And then if you're successful, you're a legend there. They build you a statue outside the stadium. We've kind of referenced that on previous podcasts. So, yeah, it's a good job. It makes a lot of sense. He got a pretty significant pay raise. He didn't get like Jimbo Fisher money, but he got like a $3 or $4 million pay raise per year. That's enough, plus all the resources, everything you need to be successful that you just simply don't have at Duke. It makes sense from Elko's standpoint why he left.
Yeah. I think Alexis Solaris points out something important, saying that job is radioactive. No one's going to perform to their expectations. So that second piece, I think, is one of the things I hone in on, and it goes back to us saying that these are psychotic fans. I think the idea there is we have so much money, and we are in such a good recruiting ground, and basically everything that's visible to the naked eye is like there's no good reason that this shouldn't be a top 5, top 10 perennial football powerhouse, right? And yet, we're also getting close to the 100-year anniversary of Texas A&M's last national championship. Not once since 1939 has Texas A&M won a national title, which begs the question, what is it that we're not seeing and what's not visible to the naked eye?
Right.
And there might be something there, and I think that's kind of what Alexis Solaris is making a good point on. I have two thoughts here, Mike, two kind of main takeaways. Number one, we were so close. They almost hired Dabo. We were so close, yeah, Mike. It almost happened. I was Joe Stradamus over here.
So close would have been them doing to Dabo what they just did to Mark Stoops. That would have been close.
His name was floated by like 3 or 4 people out there once or twice. I mean, we almost got there. I was almost right. Number one. Number two, and maybe a little bit more pertinent here, I think there was a couple people that made a good point that I think hiring Mike Elko in place of Mark Stoops is actually a fairly comparable hire. It's kind of call it the discount Mark Stoops hire. I think the two coaches profile very similarly, both defensive coordinator, defensive mastermind kind of guys, have shown an ability as a head coach to embrace offense, clearly are able to develop and build a program, all this stuff, right? The biggest difference is tenure. Mark Stoops has done this for longer. Mike Elko did it for like a year and a half, lost his quarterback, and then I don't really hold much of any of the losses in the final 6 weeks against him. And honestly, I feel kind of good seeing how hard that team continued to play and how close they made games, at a clear disadvantage on offense. So I think that by hiring a guy who has a shorter tenure but is otherwise a similar profile, to me, this is it's like a higher risk hire, but I think ultimately like the range of outcomes is probably pretty comparable. And clearly, in terms of what they would have had to pay to get Mark Stoops out of Kentucky versus what they're going to have to pay to get Mike Elko out of Duke is you could sell me on the financials of why this makes sense to do from a potential outcomes versus potential investment standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. The point specifically that you made, the discount Mark Stoops hire is, I think, the correct take. Like, Elko, while he hasn't done it, obviously, the tenure piece, right, hasn't done it as long as Stoops has, he has done something similar. He's won at a place where it's difficult to win from a football standpoint. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Duke and Kentucky are the same football job. They're not. I mean, Kentucky has more resources than Duke, certainly. But that should profile even better, right, for A&M, seeing what Elko was able to do at Duke.
Well, what's funny too is, well, they have more resources than Duke. Well, Duke has a pretty rock solid top end basketball brand, right? That, like, they're one of a few schools that probably has the financial capital coming in from their basketball program to help float their football program.
Yeah.
You know who that sounds like?
Who's that sound like, Joey?
Sounds like Kentucky.
Yeah, it does.
I think Kentucky could probably use their basketball program to float their football program. So, like, it's, you know, again, it's a similar situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, good hire for A&M. From the Duke standpoint, I mean, it's tough, right? It's tough.
Yeah.
They got an open coaching job still.
Duke fans and players were steamed about this.
Yeah, I mean, rumors that Elko was telling them in a team meeting on Saturday night that, or I guess Sunday night, it would have been Sunday night, that he was 50-50 on if he was taking it, and then Monday morning at like 3 a.m. he lands in College Station. He's trying to meet with players over Zoom, reportedly, the next morning to say that he's taking the job at A&M. It's like, obviously you are. You're 7 states away. Like, it's pretty clear that you're taking the job at A&M. I'm in the camp of, you know, things change, right? Like, did he? I want to give Elko the benefit of the doubt, maybe a little bit, insofar as saying, like, maybe at the time he spoke to the team on Sunday night, maybe this is me just being naive too, but maybe when he spoke to the team on Sunday night, he was a little more 50-50, then maybe A&M sweetened the pot a little bit. But part of me is also
I almost thought
A&M.
I thought I had read that he planned to speak to the team Sunday, and then, like, that got pushed off, canceled. They weren't sure if he was going to take the job. Maybe he was, and then it was supposed to happen on Monday, but that was by Zoom, like you're saying. Like,
yeah,
whatever in-person plans they had just got canceled and then replaced, and that's also not a great look.
I thought it was interesting too that, like, the national reporters all said that A&M was zeroing in on Mike Elko, but nobody definitively reported on Sunday night that Elko was taking the job. Mm-hmm. I thought that was interesting, right? And maybe it was just because we were on the heels of what happened with Stoops, and everybody reported that the Stoops thing was almost a done deal, and then it didn't happen. So maybe just all these reporters were being cautious when they heard that Elko was the guy. But Sunday night, it was Elko is A&M's guy, but we don't know if A&M's the job that Elko's going to take right this second. It's kind of like how I read that reporting, because nobody definitively said, yeah, Elko's leaving. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until he landed in College Station that obviously the news outlets were comfortable, right? So then you started getting Steve Wiseman, right, our friend of the podcast, 2:30 in the morning, posts his story saying sources, Elko is leaving Duke for A&M. Like, that was the first we were starting to hear of it. Thamel didn't even report it, you know? So that kind of gives you the idea of, like, these reporters were they were standing on, like, tenuous ground, right, because of what happened with Stoops. It was just like, we got to be absolutely sure before we're going to report it. So that's where I'm kind of at from the standpoint of maybe Elko just, you know, maybe he didn't know when he spoke to the team on Sunday or told people that he was 50-50. Maybe he just wasn't all the way there yet on his decision, and A&M sweetened it a little bit because the reporting kind of backs up that side of the story a little bit.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on, I do want to talk about where does Duke go from here?
Yeah.
And I'm going to pull up, I got an email, I think it was today, with Duke head coaching odds. And so I'll mention that. But before we do, just overarching thought here is, I mean, I feel like we're still in a place where anytime Duke has to go to market and make a hire, it's a dangerous, risky proposition.
Yeah.
Basically, like, you saw how it fell off at the end of Cutcliffe. You saw Elko come in and, immediately elevate the program. Well, he's being hired now by a team with top 15 resources at worst. Is Duke just guaranteed to make another fantastic hire to replace Mike Elko? No, they're not. And, was Mike Elko an average, above average, or an excellent hire? And it's so easy to make an average hire instead of an excellent one.
Yeah.
I think we were surprised how quickly Duke rebounded last year coming out of the David Cutcliffe era and kind of how it fell off towards the end. I don't think it's out of the question that this thing, if you don't make the right hire here, this could crater out again fairly quickly.
Yeah. But if I were a Duke football fan, I'd be pretty happy that Nina King was my athletic director. She's outstanding. She wins the press conference. She hired Elko, and she wins the press conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Elko, I think, was her first hire after Kevin White retired, I believe. She
probably replaced Krzyzewski too then.
Yeah, I mean that was an easy one. You just upgrade Shire from the bench. I guess that's worked out so far. Yeah, I mean she's she got out right in front of the media on Monday and said, "We wish Elko well. I'm talking to the recruits tonight. I've already talked to the players. We've already hired a search firm. This is well underway. This is the last you're going to hear from me until we make a hire." Just like flat out, like, here's our process. Here's what I'm doing. And, if you like it, great. If you don't, you don't. She was just leadership at a time when you need it, right? Hours after he leaves, and I think the one thing she mentioned that was interesting to me is that she was having active conversations with Elko late on Sunday night as far as like what they could do at Duke to enhance the resources around the football program. And if you're having, and listen, it's A&M. You're not going to compete. If you're Duke, you're not going to compete against A&M in resources. But it is encouraging that Nina King is out there having that conversation. How can we sweeten the pot? How, what can we do, to make this a better destination? If it's not going to be for you, then for somebody else, like, what can we do?
We're willing to invest.
We're willing to invest. If I'm a Duke football fan, I'm really encouraged by that. Just like the nature of the conversation. And some of it could just be like, all right, well, that's what she's supposed to do. Well, yeah, that is what she's supposed to do. And, we're not hearing those types of conversations at Syracuse and Boston College.
Just because
we're
she's
hearing
supposed
it
to
at Duke,
do it
though,
doesn't mean that everyone in that position does it. Like, they
right.
don't.
Right. So the fact she stepped right in. Now, as far as like the type of coach that they hire, back to your original point, I mean, until further notice, I mean, it's going to be a stepping stone job. And I think if you're a Duke football fan, that's best case scenario. Like, that's what you want it to be. You want somebody to come in, be really good for 3 or 4 years, and then have that coach go somewhere else, like a bigger a bigger school, more invested in football, and then you nail the next hire. And I understand if you're a Duke football fan, that's frustrating, but that's kind of the state of things. You're a basketball school. So is that repetitive time and time again? Probably not. Ideally, you'll get somebody who's going to be there for a longer period of time, but like if you're really good at this and you keep landing people like Elko, that's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, so then Duke's hosting a college game day game once a year? Like, what more do you want as a Duke football fan? I don't really understand, especially the playoff expanding to 12. You get a really good year. You get a hot Duke, a 10-2 Duke, sneaking into the playoff. Like, that's your ceiling. As a top 12 to 15 team in the country, that's your absolute ceiling, I think.
12-team playoff world, Duke's football ceiling is making the playoff once a decade.
Right.
Ceiling. And we'll see if they ever get there.
Right.
The email I got, Mike, I want to say the top 6 coaches in terms of odds. 3-1, the favorite right now, Kevin Johns, existing offensive coordinator under Elko. He's in place right now. He's the favorite. I think that's reasonable. I think people think pretty highly of him. He's in place right now. Yeah, that makes sense. Number 2, 6-1, Jamie Chadwell. No, do not put your money on that. Jamie Chadwell has been at Coastal Carolina. He's at Liberty right now. I don't think this is the job that he would leave for. I also don't think that he's the guy that Duke is going to want. I don't believe in that personally. Number 3, Curt Cignetti, 7-1. Trooper Taylor, also 7-1.
Trooper Taylor's
good
the interim.
choices. Sure.
Trooper's the interim.
Number 5, former David Cutcliffe defensive coordinator and assistant, Jimmy Knowles, current Ohio State defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's an interesting name to kind of keep an eye on. I'll say number 6, but also tied at 8-1. A man named Steve Spurrier Jr. Played at Duke. Might have played for his dad at Duke. So that's something. There's only one other name on this list, Mike, that really sticks out to me that I think is there's probably some value here, and I think if Duke were able to make this hire, it would be a home run. And spoiler alert, it might have a part of the Georgia Tech fan base in an absolute riot. Willie Fritz.
Yeah.
If Duke could get Willie Fritz, I think that's a phenomenal hire. I think they could do it. I would have no questions. Highly recommended, whatever. But also, the Georgia Tech fan base would be in a riot having him in the conference a year after they didn't want to wait a week to bring him in allegedly. So there's that.
I heard Charles Huff.
Charles
Huff, Marshall.
Charles Huff at 14-1. I don't know if that makes sense for Duke.
Apparently, he interviewed for the job 2 years ago, before Elko was hired.
Interesting. Okay.
I would I'd hire Curt Cignetti.
He's James Madison?
He's in his early 60s. I think he's 61. He'll probably coach there until he retires. You want stability. You want a guy who, an X's and O's scheme coach, who will recruit just well enough to keep Duke competitive. Yeah. Andrew from Facebook.
I know someone who needs a head coaching job.
Dino Babers.
There you go.
The Marshall AD, Andrew just brought this up too. The Marshall AD just had to put out a statement that he wasn't going to fire Charles Huff. Yep.
Been a hell of a roller coaster for Charles Huff at Marshall so far.
We are. Yeah.
Jim Knowles is the other name, the only name out there that, other than I think Kevin Johns and Willie Fritz, Jim Knowles is the only other name that I would really kind of think is a possibility. Former head coach at Cornell. They weren't great. They weren't bad while he was there. And that was almost 15 years ago. He since was at Duke for, the better part of a decade under Cutcliffe. Went to Oklahoma State for a year. Been at Ohio State now for, I think, 3 years. Is good defensive mind. Longtime football coach. Cornell guy. He played at Cornell. So I think he could fit. But, yeah, I would be a little bit surprised if we come away with someone that's not Kevin Johns, Jim Knowles, Willie Fritz, or we'll say Curt Cignetti. I think those are the 4 names that.
Or Trooper Taylor. Trooper Taylor will be 5 for me.
Anything's possible. I would take those 4 against the field personally, but who the hell knows?
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I still think it's a stepping stone job, or I think it's you're going to have to get somebody like Cignetti who's a little bit older, who sees this as if you're Cignetti, right, you've been coaching at the FCS level, and now you're coaching in the Sun Belt, and you're leading a really successful program. You're trying to get one pretty big bite at the apple at a Power 5 type job. But because of his age, he's probably not going to land a huge job, right? I mean, maybe he does, pulls a Sam Pittman and lands an SEC job. But I think it's more likely that he could land something like Duke and be there a little while until he retires. I think that's certainly within the realm of possibility. I think he'd do a good job at Duke. Look what he's doing at James Madison. At second year in the Sun Belt. You kidding me? I think that would be a really good hire for Duke.
Dude, it is hard to ignore This guy has been a head coach continuously at various levels, various conferences, going back to 2011. From 2011 through 2023, Curt Cignetti has a grand total of 35 losses. That is not a lot in 12 years of coaching.
12 years. Yeah. It's 2.5 to 3 a year.
Yeah. He's currently in the last 2 years in the Sun Belt, he's got James Madison transitioning up from the FCS. He has them 19-4.
Yeah.
They're not ranked because they're not allowed to be ranked.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason. They otherwise would be. So,
right.
Yeah, there are much worse hires you could make. Speaking of much worse hires you could make, Syracuse also made a hire this week. That's not nice.
You hate him because he's from Georgia.
That's exactly it. I'm just biased. Syracuse fired Dino Babers a couple weeks ago. They have now announced officially that they have hired, and Syracuse themselves announced that they have hired the nation's #1 recruiter, Fran Brown, who is a defensive backs coach at Georgia. So the last couple of years, he has been on Kirby Smart's staff, coached a pretty good secondary. I'll give him credit for that. Has been a defensive backs coach going back to 2013. Temple, Baylor, back to Temple, then at Rutgers. So guy who's got some experience. That's credit to him. He was a Matt Rule guy for a while. So and he's from Camden, New Jersey, so kind of from the Northeast. Mike, when Syracuse puts out a press release saying our next head coach is the nation's #1 recruiter, Fran Brown, do you get the impression that they have a different idea of what their problem is than what you and I maybe think their problem is?
I mean, I don't think that. Let me start here. This is very high risk, high reward.
I guess.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I guess high reward. Yeah. It's high risk.
I don't know.
Sure.
I'm just not. I don't think I'm as. I don't. It is high risk. I just don't think I'm as low on this hire as you are. I don't think. Did I think that they would go after a scheme guy? Go ahead.
Is Syracuse's roster a problem because Dino's not a good enough recruiter?
I think Syracuse's issue is the scheme that Dino ran probably wasn't sustainable because they couldn't recruit that type of athlete to that scheme. They aren't. He would like to throw the ball 35 times a game and have it all run this spread out offense, and they don't have the dudes. They don't have the athletes to do that. That I think is the issue, and they held it together with popsicle sticks and glue for as long as they could. And I think this really started going downhill for Dino when Tommy DeVito ended up not being any good. I think that's really when this really started to go downhill.
After Eric Dungy left, yeah.
After Eric Dungy left, because, we all thought that they were going to transition into, again, this was kind of pre-transfer portal, but we thought that it was going to be, 3 years of Tommy DeVito. Mm-hmm. Because what we saw in, spot duty was that, Jesus. What we saw in spot duty was pretty good. I should have brought in Bobby Petrino. Thank you, Andrew.
I can think of one hire that would be worse. Andrew.
The good news. The good news if you're Syracuse, it's really hard to ride your motorcycle for 6 or 7 months a year up there. So the Bobby Petrino hire might have been okay. The ladies have to be bundled up for longer periods of time, so Petrino couldn't get his hands on them. Yeah. So the Fran Brown thing, they're definitely going for a different type of hire, right? I think they hired Dino because his scheme was so good at Bowling Green. I still think he's a good coach. I've made that clear. But I think what they're going with Fran Brown is can you get us some better athletes? And then I think they're banking on Brown, then all of a sudden bringing some coaches in who kind of know what they're doing. And that's the gamble, is that you're going to put together a coaching staff that's good enough to retain and develop ideally a little bit better caliber of athlete. You're not going to recruit to like a top 40 level at Syracuse, right? So
what's the point in bringing in, quote, the nation's #1 recruiter?
To not recruit at like a top 85 level. I think you're trying to move up like 25 spots and
What's
then
the
have
difference?
a similar level. You have a similar level of coaching staff. Did Dino have an all-star coaching staff?
I mean, he had Sean Lewis, who's gotten a lot of run, but that was the first 2 years or so, and things have gone downhill since then. He had
Right.
Rocky Long, father
Rocky
of the
Long.
3-3-5, you know, like
Defense has been mid. I think Rocky Long's a good coach, but again,
Yeah.
it's like your scheme's only as good as the athletes you have, right? Because like think of the teams on defense. Think of like who Syracuse is on defense specifically. Think of, you know, the teams that Syracuse has been playing, right, up until this year when divisions were scrapped. Louisville, team speed. Florida State, team speed. Clemson, team speed. Like
NC State.
they're NC State, team speed. They're dealing with a disadvantage on, you know, 4 or 5 conference opponents they're playing every single year prior to this year, right? That's tough. And Dino was pretty consistently taking them to bowl games.
Mhm.
So you got to like really be sure. That's the thing. Like, it's a similar conversation we had when BC fired Adazio. It's like you got to be absolutely sure that the guy you're hiring is going to be able to elevate it more in the 7-5 level. And it's the discussion we had about Hafley on the last podcast when we did the recap. We had that whole discussion. Look at Jeff Hafley's record since he's been at Boston College. He's been pretty much a 6-win coach. They're worse now than they were under Adazio.
Mhm.
That's not why you bring in and they brought in the recruiter. Hafley was a good recruiter at Ohio State.
Mhm.
It hasn't worked there. They're recruiting a similar area at Syracuse. So, like, I don't know. I think it could work. I think it's risky. I think it's different. So I think they're trying something different. I don't know if it's going to work.
Mike, do you ever feel like you could recruit at Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
You ever feel like you could recruit at Georgia?
I think in a lot of ways, those schools sell themselves, right? Until
Yeah.
you get into recruiting battles against Georgia and Ohio State, like,
Sure, yeah.
right? But
That's
that's
fine.
those are the battles they're in. Those are the battles they're in. They're not recruiting against Georgia Tech. Sorry, like they're not recruiting really. I mean, they're not recruiting against.
Not challenging recruiting battles against Georgia Tech, anyways. But anyways,
It's yeah. It's like the for a Georgia guy that they're recruiting against Georgia Tech with, it's like a guy who's like middle of their class or towards the bottom of their class, like
yeah.
versus 5-star. I'm talking like Alabama, Florida
Yeah.
State, Miami. Like we're recruiting against those schools to get
Top
like,
25
the guy
players in the country.
in the country. That's
Yeah.
all I mean. That's all I mean by that.
Yep. So here's my issue, and nothing against Fran Brown. Like again, he's 40 years old. He's been associated with some good defenses, really good defenses. If he's the nation's #1 recruiter, I absolutely believe that he deserves a head coaching spot somewhere. Like that, he has earned an opportunity to be a head coach. I have nothing against Fran Brown. I'm just be super transparent here. I hadn't really even heard of Fran Brown a week ago. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't have picked him from Adam. I don't know.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with Fran Brown. It has everything to do with Syracuse. And I believe that there's one of two things that happen here. Either number one, Syracuse's athletic director, athletic department, whatever the search committee, has a very different idea of what they need than what I think they need. Totally possible. I'm not their AD. I've never been to Syracuse. I don't know. I'm just guessing. So totally possible, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Not
number,
near Camden, New Jersey. Just FYI.
Not that
Yeah,
close.
To be clear.
Yeah.
Clear, not near Camden, New Jersey.
Camden, New Jersey is like outside of Philly, basically, which is not that close to Syracuse.
Correct.
The other possibility here, Mike, is that Syracuse had a list of half a dozen candidates that do make sense with what I think would make sense. Reached out to them, and they all said, think I'm good.
That's what I think.
I think it's possible. It's on the table.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that Dan Mullen rumor was not a rumor.
There was a
I'm a-
lot of smoke with Dan Mullen in that Syracuse job.
I'm of the opinion that he went up there to see what was going on, and he was like, listen, if I'm going to do this whole coaching thing again, it ain't going to be here. Like
ESPN ain't so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I need something cushy like Central Florida, like Gus Malzahn, right? If I'm leaving an SEC job, like I need something a little bit more cushy with a school that cares about football.
This is why I went on my thing a couple weeks ago about Jeff Monken, Dan Mullen. Like, people, you need someone who has a track record of elevating a program and outperforming, like, roster quality, basically. Like, do I think that Dan Mullen would recruit Syracuse as well as anybody possibly could? No. That's not the point. I think that at some point you get kind of outside of that really upper echelon of recruits, and a lot of them are fairly comparable. They're all similar types of players, one strength, one weakness, different strength, different weakness, whatever. It's the coaches that can take that and play to the strengths and minimize the weaknesses. That's what I think Syracuse should have been shooting for here.
Yeah.
I think the two names that I think I texted you and Scott, and it's ironic that they're both now in the state of Kansas, but Lance Leipold, formerly at Buffalo, not that far from Syracuse, and also then previously won several national titles at D3 Wisconsin Whitewater, or Chris Kleiman, formerly at North Dakota State. Like, these are the types of guys that I think would make sense for this job. And again,
not those two guys, but
yeah,
those type of guys. Yeah, like
Syracuse isn't getting those guys out of Kansas and Kansas State. But
right.
Like, again, Jeff Monken, Dan Mullen. There was at least one or two other names that I floated to you guys that I'm blanking on at the moment. But this is just such a departure from what I thought they were going to do or thought they should do. And so hope it works. Hope for the best for Fran Brown. Hope he's as distracted as possible over the next month. Hope it impacts Georgia's chances at a national championship. I have no ill will anywhere here. I'm just saying right now, I'm putting my flag in the ground. I don't think this works. And I don't think that they had the right idea of making this hire. Now, he's also got to make coordinator hires and do some other stuff. And, we'll see what happens there. But for now, I don't buy this right now. I don't think this is a good idea.
I have been a fan of college football for far too long to pass judgment on a hire as soon as it's made. So I am not going to do that. I'm going to wait and see. Because there are plenty of coaches that when they were hired, I thought made a lot of sense, would be really good. What's up, Justin Fuente? They didn't turn out very well. So I am going to wait and see.
I didn't think Bronco Mendenhall was going to work, and it kind of did.
You were
Speaking of
calling
names who might make a lot of sense for this job.
You were calling for Dave Doran's head. Never forget.
For Dave Doran's head. Yeah, I was wrong.
Look at him now.
Been there.
Now, in your defense, though, Doran is a much better coach now than he was then.
Hold on. We have a sound for this.
You can kiss my ass.
There it is.
We got the shortened version.
Good. Beautiful. That'll be.
Yeah.
We'll keep that one in our back pocket.
Yeah. There's a program builder aspect that I thought they should be going for here, and they didn't. And hope it works. I'm not buying it personally for what that's worth. Is that Joey Weaver doesn't believe in Syracuse football's hire. So
didn't know him a week ago.
Couldn't have picked him from Adam. I have no clue. No clue.
Didn't know him a week ago. I hate the hire.
Yep, absolutely. I think the only other coaching change that was really like kind of significant that happened in the last week or so, Pitt fired Frank Cignetti Jr.
Surprise.
The offensive coordinator. I think it was 2 years at Pitt, former Boston College offensive coordinator. So when Scott Loeffler immediately gets the Duke job, Frank Cignetti currently on track to get the Boston College head coaching job, or the Bowling Green head coaching job. He's on the Scott Loeffler development path, I think.
Yeah, that's how this works.
Yeah. This was maybe the most unsurprising coaching move in the ACC so far. We were talking about this weeks ago as a possibility and almost a likelihood.
Since early October.
I don't know what Pat Narduzzi wants from his offense, but at the very least, it wasn't this. He wants a little bit more than what they got this year, which was almost nothing.
Yeah, wants slightly more than nothing, which that's good at least.
Only slightly more, though.
Yeah. I really don't have anything to say here other than what we've already said, which is like this wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, again, the bigger, broader conversation here is what does Narduzzi want in an offensive coordinator?
Didn't like all those points that Mark Whipple scored.
That's what I'm saying, right? So he runs Whipple off. Does he want Matt Canada? Matt Canada's jobless now. Can go back to the well.
Run that back.
I don't know. I mean, it would be an upgrade from Cignetti. I think.
Probably should start with getting a quarterback first.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that
In
a minute.
Cignetti's
Quarterbacks
defense.
are available.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can reach out to him whenever you want. Mid-season.
Yep.
Late season.
Mike, anything else on coaching news?
No, I mean, Jeff Hafley's going to keep his job, right? He would have been fired already. So.
Yep. Yeah, they're going to keep him.
Just funny.
I don't know that I don't think I blame him for keeping him. I don't think I would have blamed him for firing him. I'm kind of okay either way. So makes sense to me to keep him and try it again for another year.
I can keep making jokes. So that's all I care about.
Mike, let's do some podcast business real quick, and then we can move on to a couple other news notes and get into the ACC Championship preview game preview.
Stroke.
This podcast brought to you by Section103.com, the internet's premier place for all things wonderful Georgia Tech apparel. They've got T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, something for men, women, children, toddlers, babies, something for the whole family. They've got things with the official word marks, all the official Tech gold. All these things, it's hard to find these things elsewhere for reasons unknown, but you can definitely find them on Section103.com. Use promo code GOACC for 10% off your first order. They've got NIL jerseys for supporting Haynes King, for supporting Dante Smith, Zach Pyron, Miles Kelly from the basketball team. They've got a couple basketball shirts that have come out, and again, the toddler and the baby stuff is brand new. I've got a couple things on the way to my house supporting my toddler and my baby. Adam Parker in the comments brings up a good point. If you're watching this live right now, you got about, I don't know, maybe an hour or so to get 21% off after the basketball team beat Mississippi State last night. They were the number 21 Mississippi State Bulldogs. So to that point, keep it tuned to their social medias, Instagram.com/section_103. Section 103, find them on Twitter. That's how you'll find out about some good deals, or you can sign up for the email list. They'll keep you updated because sometimes these things come and go, but you get really, really good deals if you are following them on social media. So in any case, once again, section103.com, use promo code GOACC for 10% off your first order. Really appreciate Steven and the gang for their partnership. Picture coming soon with my young children wearing Section 103 gear, so keep it tuned here.
Bang.
Nailed it. Mike, do we want to jump in real quick on some folks who are jumping in themselves to the portal?
Where do you want to start?
I think there's one place we have to start. Well, unless you want to save that for the end. And let's do
we can hit off top. Hit off top.
You want to hit off the top?
Yep.
We're a few hours removed, Mike, from finding out, and it's stunning, unforeseen news that Duke quarterback Riley Leonard will be entering the transfer portal. Nobody's sure why. It could have maybe something or nothing to do with his head coach leaving 2 days ago.
Right.
He will be entering the transfer portal, and about 5 minutes after he announced that he's entering the transfer portal, there were heavy rumors that he knows exactly where he's going, and it's a little bit reminiscent of a situation we saw last year, Mike.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
Weird. He's in the portal, and it says no contact. Like, don't reach out to me. Everybody and their brother is saying he's going to Notre Dame. Huh, that's weird. Same thing happened with Sam Hartman, if I remember correctly.
And wait, where did he go again?
That's right, Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
Could the Irish be tampering? Yes.
No. That's against the rules, Mike.
I want to go on a quick rant here about the transfer portal because I was a proponent of the immediate eligibility because my argument all along has been, well, if a coach can leave in the middle of the night, we were just talking about Mike Elko leaving in the middle of the night, then, a player at the end of the year, if he decides he wants to go elsewhere, he should be eligible immediately, the one-time transfer rule. I think it's totally reasonable. If you're a graduate transfer and you're eligible right away, that's a whole separate discussion. That's totally fine. Where it gets dangerous is when you have NIL. We've talked about this a million times. When you have NIL and you have the portal and immediate eligibility and there's no regulations, you get this. You get Riley Leonard clearly talking to Marcus Freeman ahead of him actually formally entering the portal, right? Because his season's over. Leonard's been hurt, right? So he's probably not playing the bowl game anyway. Obviously he's not now because he's transferring. But he probably wasn't going to be playing the bowl game anyway, is what Marcus Freeman's thinking, because he sees Elko leave, and he's like, Leonard's not going to stay there. So let's see what he's got going on. I played against him this year. He was really hard to defend for 4 quarters. It would be great if we inserted him in our offense. Mm-hmm. So he calls him up, and he says, would you be interested in coming to Notre Dame? He says, yes, I'll enter in the transfer portal on Wednesday. And lo and behold, every news outlet had it as soon as he entered the transfer portal. It was like the worst kept secret in college football. Why is this a thing? Why are coaches able to do this? I went on this rant with USC and Lincoln Riley poaching Jordan Addison a couple years ago when the portal first started. I went on this rant.
And
I hate it.
With Caleb Williams.
Then again with Caleb Williams. That was not as big of a deal because Lincoln was jumping. You knew he was going with him. But it was like
different. Anyways,
taking the player off of the opposing team before he formally announces that he's transferring is some slimy shit. And I know that, and listen, grew up a Notre Dame fan, didn't get into school there. I still root for Notre Dame on Saturdays. I still want them to win football games. This isn't just a Notre Dame thing. This is happening everywhere. Like with my Lincoln Riley point, like this is happening all over college football. And this is why coaches like Dave Doran, when college football media and fans are coming at Dave Doran saying, oh, why do you make all this money? And you're talking about how fans should be putting more money and pouring more money into NIL to help you retain players. This is why. This is not a problem that Dave Doran created. This is something the NCAA let permeate. They didn't do anything about for a long period of time. It went to Congress, and then all of a sudden, now we have NIL. Now we have this transfer portal, the one-time transfer rule, and all these players get to go wherever the hell they feel like right away. Nobody did anything about it, the NCAA level, and now we're in this mess where it really is the Wild West. It's college football free agency, and there's no regulations about it. At some point, you just got to throw your hands up and be like, what the hell are we doing here? And I don't know when we're going to reach that point, but it's incredibly frustrating. And this is somebody who has been in support of the players, making money off their name, image, and likeness. This is, in favor of the transfer portal and players being eligible right away if they want to transfer. Like, I've supported both of those things. But at some point, enough is enough. This is crazy. Like, coaches shouldn't be just being able to do this. And for the fans, the college football fans who are like, this has always happened. They've always paid the players. Yes, of course they have. This transfer portal thing has not always happened. You haven't had this widespread tampering across the entire sport. This is new. Like, this is something that's been in effect the last couple of years since the transfer portal came about with immediate eligibility and NIL. This part of it is new. This hasn't always been the case. So when people say that, I think it's a lazy argument because it's just simply not true. Yeah. So it drives me insane. It really frustrates me when these guys are like, I'm entering the transfer portal. And Pete Thamel at 3:01 today is like, Notre Dame is a strong candidate. Like, watch out for Notre Dame here. How do you know that, Pete? Like, who told you that? Obviously, the player told you that. Somebody's agent told you that. Like, it's just ridiculous, man. It's just really frustrating to me.
What's the last material thing that you can remember the NCAA doing other than keeping Tez Walker from playing this year?
Suspending Johnny Manziel.
As it relates to college football, right? Like
taking Reggie Bush's Heisman away.
The NCAA is
for reasons.
Like, nope.
Oh,
like,
not letting JMU go to a bowl game, even though they got into a bowl game
Oh,
anyway.
that's the one. That's the one.
denying that. Yeah. What are we doing with the NCAA at this point? Like, what's the point? This is getting completely out of hand. I'm with you. First of all, and the word that I used when I first saw this happen, right, is 3 o'clock. Riley Leonard's transferring from Duke. 3:05. He's probably going to Notre Dame. Mike, that's insulting. That's insulting to my intelligence, your intelligence, Scott's intelligence, everyone in the chat, everyone listening to this right now. There's no tampering. Nobody had ever talked to Riley Leonard before 3 o'clock, and you know what? Give me a friggin' break. Grow up. Of course, like, stop acting like this doesn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
Of course it happens. And
I mean, Notre Dame was in Durham this year. You don't
That's
know
what I'm
what's
saying.
happened.
That's what I'm saying. Freeman played against this guy for 4 quarters. He's like, we really can't defend him. It would be great if he was on my team. Oh, and his head coach just left. Let's give him a call. Like,
couple
what are we
post-game
doing?
handshakes, yeah, exchange numbers and texts a couple times. Like,
It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's really irritating. And the other thing that I'll mention as I relate to this is, you're right, Mike, is that when we look at this of like, should players just be able to freely transfer, even with NIL and all that, from an objective like player rights standpoint, yes. Mm-hmm. And coaches have never needed permission to go anywhere for any amount of money. So, yeah, they get to go anywhere. So who's the victim here? I'll come back. The victim are fans. Mm-hmm. Fans are the victims here because you're basically punished for emotionally investing in some of these players, some of these coaches, you know, whatever. And again, coaches, this has been going on for much longer, and there's money involved and all that. That's the new thing with the players being able to transfer anytime, anywhere for money and other motivations, you know, whatever, is that fans are punished and basically encouraged to not emotionally invest in their teams and in the sport. And I won't go too much longer on this, but basically just saying, like, that is bad for the health of the sport long term, is if people are not encouraged to emotionally invest in it. Because that's the whole point of being a fan, is that you're emotionally investing in something. And when you're repeatedly punished for it, when I'm punished for investing in Jahmyr Gibbs being at Georgia Tech because, well, he's just going to go somewhere else, that sucks. That makes me less of a fan of my team and less of a fan of the sport. And that's a problem. Yeah. And that only goes away if there's some sort of overarching governing body that figures out a way to rectify all this and kind of solve the problem. And currently the NCAA is like, nah, I'm good. Y'all do what you want, and we'll just tell Tez Walker he can't play and James Madison they can't go to the bowl game.
I was going to say, yeah, we'll focus our time and attention on, you know, sitting on our thumb on, like, really easy decisions that are, like, absolute no-brainers for the rest of college football. Stuff that, like, coaches and teams across the sport would care about and would actually be in support of. They're like, no, we're just going to rule opposite of that. Like the Tez Walker situation, we're like, you know what, we're not going to make him eligible. Then there was such an outcry that they were like, oh, you know, we might have screwed that up. Okay, Tez Walker, you can return now in October. Like, what are we doing? And the JMU thing, JMU's going to a bowl game now, but only because they didn't have enough bowl-eligible teams. So now James Madison's in a bowl game. But it shouldn't have even been a question.
College game day there, a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
James Madison is a top 50 team. I mean, I know James Madison lost like to App State that day. They are easily a top 50 team in the sport. That's good enough to be in a bowl game. Like, it's just crazy to me.
They're 11-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous. So,
in a competitive Sun Belt. It's annoying.
Anyways, Riley Leonard's transferring to Notre Dame. You heard it here first.
Yeah. These will be quicker now. Max Johnson leaving A&M, transferring to North Carolina.
Sure. I'm sure that'll end up better.
He's an interesting guy. Like, he's got a really good touchdown to interception ratio, but he, like, just continuously loses his starting job. Like, he started at LSU for a time, lost out a quarterback competition at Jaden Daniels. Mm-hmm. You know, transfers to A&M. He's the backup there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's going to go to Carolina. He's going to be the guy for a year. I don't know if that's really going to work out or not. It's definitively a step down for Drake May, but I don't know.
Yeah.
He'll work. It could work out okay.
Tyler Van Dyke transferring out of Miami. No destination there yet, as far as we know.
Not surprising.
Unless we just are to assume there was someone in the comments that mentioned that he's going to Pitt, which, yeah, sure, why not?
Got a lot of Phil Dracovic in him.
We also saw running back, was it Henry Parrish, I think, is also transferring out of Miami. Interesting move. Mitch Griffiths and Justice Ellison transferring out of Wake Forest.
Also Santino Marucci.
Yep, Santino Marucci gone as well. Yeah, our guy. Anyone else significant out of the ACC? I feel like there might have been one more.
Virginia Tech starting tight end Daquan Wright.
That's, significant.
Pat Garwo, Boston College.
Pat Garwo.
Pat
Been hurt all
Garwo,
year.
Boston
That's
College.
a big one, though. Yep.
So we'll kind of keep you updated as we hear of any more other kind of big significant names. Sorry, it wasn't. It was Don Chaney out of Miami. Not who did I say?
Henry Parrish.
It was not Henry Parrish. It was Don Chaney.
How about Roscoe Parrish?
Yeah, that's right. Roscoe Dash transferring out of Miami. So
We'll just throw the old names in there. Yeah.
there you go.
Kellen Winslow.
Mike, anything else on the portal?
No, I mean this is only the beginning, right? It's been open for a few days, so
Yep.
we'll hear more.
There will be more in the next couple of weeks. The portal's not even officially open yet. We got a few days. I think it's December 4th. Was that next Monday or something that it opens? So there'll be a lot more after that. Also, coaching carousel far. It's still kind of tuning up a little bit. Honestly, we're on the front end of the coaching carousel, so there will be a lot more. I think in the next month to 6 weeks. So we will keep you updated on any sort of updates, major significant developments that come from the coaching carousel there. Mike, do we want to hit the All-ACC team? All-ACC team right now?
Scott may have the oh, whoops. Sorry. My video cut out. Am I still here? Good. Am I good? Can you
Looks
hear me?
like it. I hear you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, good. Scott, you may have the answer to this, but what was our over-under total? I know we had the on the preview with us, and we had Tony on. We were discussing the number of coaching openings. What was our over-under there? Do we have an over-under, or did we just pick?
You just predict the number of changes. You both said 2. Tony said 3.
I kind of remember. I think I was actually correct, picking one firing, one hiring away, or even like Mac Brown retiring kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember Tony picking 3, and it sounds right that, Mike, you might have picked 2.
Yeah. Tony picking Elliott, which is very funny. Tony picking Tony Elliott to be fired. Actually, I thought that was going to come to fruition halfway through October.
Yeah.
So that was not a bad prediction on Tony's part. I think he was definitely onto something. I don't think that was I don't think that was rooted in BS. I think he was dead serious, and I think that was well founded. Because
yeah, they were on track through 6 weeks of the season.
And there were some rumors with credible people talking about it. So I think Tony was definitely onto something in the preseason when he suggested that Tony Elliott, if it got bad enough, could be let go.
Yep.
So
all ACC teams, real quick.
I think this a lot. I mean the biggest gripe I have just in totality with the All-ACC teams is I feel like it's kind of how I feel about the Heisman too. There are too many voters, and I think the voters who aren't as in tune as maybe you and I would be, they watch the big games in the ACC, and they don't kind of see how seasons go for teams in totality. So when I don't see Haynes King on an All-ACC team, that's a pretty good indicator to me that some of the voters didn't watch the games. When I see that Antoine Powell-Ryland had like 3 more sacks than Jared Verse. And Antoine Powell-Ryland is not first-team All-ACC over Jared Verse. I'm thinking, okay, well, you're picking Jared Verse because he's the best player on the defense of an undefeated Florida State team that's in the playoff hunt.
Kind of a
name. So it's the same gripes I've always had, but I think this year I was just kind of looking at it and like another like Virginia Tech specific gripe I had. Tucker Holloway was an honorable mention punt returner. He's like top 5 in the country in several punt return categories, and he's honorable mention as a specialist. It's like I think we're really just kind of going for names.
Third
in
team.
A lot of these. Third team.
Third team.
Okay, third team. Probably should have been second team at worst. So we're really just splitting hairs, but it's just very frustrating.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that 2 Virginia players made first team, one on offense in Malik Washington, who's very good.
Deserved.
And
Deserved.
defense in Jonas Sanker. And they're just like not a good team. So like it was just baffling.
Yeah.
That's always one of the things I kind of lean towards is, Georgia Tech was 3rd, 4th in the conference in terms of in-conference record. And I think it maybe had 1 player on the second team and like 1 player, maybe 2 players on the third team. Like, is there like a regional bias here of, we only watch certain teams and that kind of thing? I don't know. I was really, really put off by Haynes King being honorable mention and Jack Plummer being third team. Like, some of the counting stats were Jack Plummer's better than Haynes King. Yeah, sure. But, like, Mike, do your
Watch the game.
Yeah.
Watch
your
the game,
eyes.
yeah.
Scott, Mike, watching the games. You're down a touchdown with 8 minutes left in the game. Do you want Jack Plummer back there or Haynes King?
Haynes King.
Yeah.
There's a reason we call him Jag Plummer. There's a reason.
He is just a guy. That bugged me. I also saw some numbers that were pretty damning. Like, there was a case to be made that who the best corner in the ACC may well have been? Louisville's Quincy Riley. Because I know you don't know. We're not watching corners that closely. Quincy Riley from Louisville. David Hale had some numbers on him in terms of just like allowing completions, allowing touchdowns,
Yep.
Yards per game, like simple stuff. Him and Miles Sims from Georgia Tech were like 2 of the 9 best corners in the country, depending on a couple of the numbers that you look at. Would you like to know which All-ACC team that Quincy Riley made?
Tell the people.
That would be honorable mention, Mike.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like, Quincy Riley is probably the closest thing that Louisville has had to Jair Alexander since he left. Legitimately very, very good corner for that defense. And kind of ridiculous that not only not first team, but is an honorable mention. Like, come on. We're better than this. We can do better.
Yeah.
Too many voters. You're right.
Too many voters, and we end up with just incorrect balloting. It's fine.
Yep. So, anyways, first team, just to run it down real quick. Quarterback Jordan Travis, running backs Omarion Hampton, Jawar Jordan. I think that makes sense. Malik Washington, Keon Coleman, Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver. Bryson Nesbitt, tight end. All-purpose Keon Coleman. Offensive line, Graham Barton from Duke, Darius Washington, Florida State, Dimitri Emanuel, Florida State, Christian Mahogany, Boston College, and Brian Hudson from Louisville. Defense.
And Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Ashton Gillott, Louisville. Jared Verse, Florida State. Tyler Davis, Clemson. Dwayne Carter, Duke. Peyton Wilson, NC State. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Kalen DeLoach, Cedric Gray. That was Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina. Nate Wiggins, corner from Clemson. Elijah Jones, corner from Boston College. Safety, Cameron Kinchins from Miami. Safety, Jonas Sanker from Virginia. Place kicker, Andy Borgalis from Miami. Punter, Porter Wilson from Duke. And special teams or specialist player, Keon Coleman from Florida State, who was also the all-purpose player, which, what are we doing?
And a wide receiver. Like, he got 3 positions? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, what was he, third team wide receiver?
No, he was first team wide receiver.
Was he?
And
He
first
was.
team
Oh my
all purpose.
gosh, I said that.
And first team specialist. Like, what?
Wide
There's
receiver,
one dude.
all-purpose, and specialist. Yeah, what are we doing?
Also, like, I didn't see him as a specialist or all-purpose really this year, and maybe I just didn't watch enough Florida State. But like, okay, and he was hurt a lot.
Yeah. Josh Depens
He's good.
nails it.
I get he's good.
Yeah, he's
But
good.
3 positions
But-
good.
But he's not that good. He's not
He
that
hasn't
good.
been healthy in a
Come
month and
on.
a half.
I
Like,
know. This is my point. This is my point about the laziness of the voters and there being too many of them. And they're all still wrapped up in what Keon Coleman did against LSU in the opener. They didn't watch another game this year, and they just assume he was first team because of what he did all year. I mean, Coleman was good this year, but it's just like an example of they watch like 1 or 2 primetime games. They don't watch anything else, and they just look at box scores. It's annoying.
Does he deserve to be a top 25 pick in the draft next year? Yeah.
Keon
So,
Coleman? Of course. Right. Yeah.
top 3 wide receiver in the draft, I think. Does he deserve to have 3 slots on the All-ACC first
No.
team?
No. Does
No.
Marvin Harrison? Like, I know Marvin Harrison is not like
The
a
Big Ten?
kick returner. My point being like, yes, and he's in the Big Ten. But my
Marvin
point being
Harrison
like,
didn't play in the ACC.
my point is, Marvin Harrison, with everybody except for Danny Cannell, and I guess Booger McFarland, which tells you everything you need to know. Besides those 2 guys, everybody on the planet thinks Marvin Harrison is the best wide receiver in college football, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you give him like 3 or 4 spots? No, you wouldn't. Don't be ridiculous.
No, don't do it. Mike, we've been recording for an hour and 6 minutes, almost 7. Should we talk about the ACC Championship game now?
I was hoping we'd talk about the transfer portal some more.
I was hoping to talk about Syracuse's head coaching hire some more, but, that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Okay. Fran Brown. Back to it.
Saturday night in Charlotte, 8 o'clock on ABC. The number 14 Louisville Cardinals taking on the number 4 Florida State Seminoles. The Noles all the way down to a 2.5-point favorite. Correct me if I'm wrong. This opened at like 5.5 or 6, didn't
I
it?
saw 4.5 at the
Okay.
open.
4.5 is what I saw as well.
Okay. Maybe it was a week ago. I saw like a futures line of like 6.5
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something. And
It was a week ago.
Yep.
Yes.
This thing is coming down, and Vegas, the market, seems like they do not believe in the Noles in this game. Mike, do you?
Engaged Florida State all year. And engaged Florida State has been very tough to beat. Louisville, they've been good, right?
Sometimes.
But I look at their schedule, right? This is kind of where I'm hung up with this game. I look at their schedule and find me the team as good as Florida State. I get that. I understand that Jordan Travis is not in the lineup. I get that, right? I understand Florida State's a different team with their backup quarterback, and we can't just flat out ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the rest of the roster, you look at the front 7 on defense for Florida State. You look at the offensive line for Florida State, which has been pretty good. You look at the skill position players for Florida State, which they got a bunch, right? Who has Louisville played this year that matches Florida State in several categories? My argument would be the closest one is Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's got severe skill position deficiencies on the outside on offense in comparison to Florida State.
Yeah, they don't compare.
They don't compare. They don't have Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. They don't have that.
Right.
That's my hang up here.
Is Sam Hartman better than Tate Rodemaker?
Sam, you sick bastard. The people have been asking. Rodemaker did not inspire a whole lot of confidence in his first start, but he did go down to the swamp and play competent enough, especially in the second half. I thought he played better in the second half to put Florida State in position offensively to get their their skill position players and their playmakers in space to make enough plays when it matters down the stretch in that game.
Got better as the game went on.
Certainly got better as the game went on. Tough road environment. Good defense. Florida's got good defense. And obviously a motivated team that also didn't have their starting quarterback in that game. But, yeah, that's my hang-up here, is who has Louisville played that matches the level of number 4 Florida State? And even if you don't think Florida State's the 4th best team in the country in regard to the college football playoff rankings, or 4th most deserving team, because God knows we still don't know what we're ranking. Not even the committee knows. Like, even if you think they're a top 6 or 7 team in the country, who has Florida State played to that caliber? I think the answer is Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's a top 20 team, not a top 6 team, 7 team.
Right.
So that's my hang-up here.
Mike, how long have you been watching ACC football?
A long, long time.
And in your experience in watching ACC football, how frequently does ACC football turn out in the way that the most benefits the ACC?
Not very often.
Not very often.
Especially when Clemson's not involved. I would say not very often.
Yeah.
When Clemson's involved, I would say it's historically been pretty advantageous to the ACC, with the exception of like Labor Day this year against Duke. Other than that, when Clemson's involved, it's generally going okay.
The whole Clemson reign of terror making the playoff every year. Like, what I'd be talking about is, the next team making, the Orange Bowl or, whatever New Year's Six game, kind of thing.
Pitt beating Miami on Black Friday.
Right, exactly. I look at this game, Mike. I see a Louisville team with an underwhelming third-team All-ACC quarterback. I see a Florida State team with a questionable at best backup quarterback who's going to be playing, who might low-key be concussed, and we're still not totally sure about that. That's on the table. We don't know. I see two teams with very good defenses, and I've been watching ACC football long enough to know that Florida State, all Florida State has to do, if they win this game, I don't care what people are saying. They don't have to win convincingly. They don't have to win in a blowout. Florida State wins this game, they're in the playoff. They would be 13-0, Power 5 conference champion. That's it. Amen. It's over. They're in the playoff. But, Mike, I have watched ACC football for long enough to know that this is the kind of conference and the kind of group of teams that when all it takes is just one thing to happen that probably should happen for the conference to benefit, it doesn't happen. Or more often than it should, it doesn't happen. So, Mike, for non-football reasons, and definitely not for my own fandom, I think Louisville's winning the ACC Championship on Saturday.
Sure. Why not?
It's not for football reasons. It's not for fan reasons. Because of friggin' course, it's going to keep Florida State out of the playoff and keep the ACC out of the playoff. If Jordan Travis were in this game, I think Florida State is like a double-digit favorite. I might be picking the Noles to cover. I think that injury at that time, and I just don't trust Tate Rodemaker. Who's got the coaching advantage in this game from a head coaching standpoint? I think it might be Louisville.
I don't know.
I think I'd rather have Jeff Brom than Mike Norvell, honestly.
I don't know.
I think highly of them both.
Yeah, like on the basis of what? Brom has snuck up on some big-time teams at home before. Like, this is a neutral site.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And yes, I'm with you. I think highly of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's like a definitive advantage one way or the other.
Yeah. Louisville, outright. Total is 47.5. Give me the under. I think this is a rock fight, low-scoring kind of game. Both defenses better than both offenses, I think. Honestly, I think it's a turnover or two that really kind of decides this. So, just for the sake of, I've watched this league for long enough, and I feel like I can just sort of see what's going to happen. It's too easy. It's too easy for Florida State to just win this game as the favorite and get into the playoff. It's not going to happen. Come on. So yeah, Louisville outright under 47.5.
Let's go ahead and lock up the under. I'm with you. I'm going to lock that up.
You better lock it up. You better lock it up. No, you lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up. Lock it up.
Please.
This will come as no shock to you. I'm done. I'm good on locks for the year. Like, I've been hesitant enough. I feel stronger about the under than I feel about Louisville, but could this game get into the upper 20s? Yeah, it could. I don't know.
We've had to hold a gun to your head to get you to pick anything this year. So
Yeah.
I'm not shocked that you didn't lock anything up here. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Florida State. I just still don't respect Louisville, really. Maybe I should more than I do. I just don't, really.
To cover?
Again, Florida State to cover? Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
to cover. I think Florida State wins this game by about a touchdown. I just don't really trust Louisville, man. Like, anytime Louisville gets into a game where there's kind of like a battle in the trenches a little bit, they haven't always won that game, right? Like, I'm thinking about, there are three games in particular. There's the Pitt game that they lost. There's the Notre Dame game that they won, where they battered the Irish up front in the second half, and I thought that was really impressive. And then there's what happened last week against Kentucky, where I'm just like, I throw my hands up, and at some point it's just like, what are we doing here, right?
Did they lose to Pitt and Kentucky because they lost in the line of scrimmage?
I think they
Not
lost.
really.
I think they lost to Kentucky specifically because they lost the line of scrimmage. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought they lost
do.
because their quarterback turned the ball over. Anyways, yeah. Anyways,
Joey,
sorry.
whose defense do you think is better, Florida State's or Kentucky's?
I think Florida State's.
Yeah.
But I will say, there is one thing that I looked up here before we did this that I think kind of confirmed a little bit of what I was thinking. So if you just look at defenses on – so, again, we don't really love either of the quarterbacks in this battle, right? So then what matters is going to be the run offenses, right? And both teams very good running backs. Trey Benson, Jawar Jordan, Isaac Guerrero, like all those guys have been very good this year. The rushing defenses here, Louisville second in the conference, 3.25 yards per carry on the year. Very good. Florida State kind of middle of the conference, just shy of 4 yards per carry on the year. So, like, I think there's a chance that Louisville could get a little bit of room to run and try to, if both teams are really going to focus on the run game, I think it's there for Louisville a little bit more than Florida State. But, of course, I mean, either of these teams, either of these running backs, you're 1 or 2 plays away from 7-10 points, of long plays, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe this is just naive, but I just think that Florida State has played better competition. I think they're more battle tested to be in this spot. I think big game Jeff Brom's a thing, so I'm not shying away from that. Like, I do think he'll have them ready to play. But Florida State's been through a lot this year. They've been in a lot of big games. They've come out on the right side of them several times. Like, they beat the brakes off LSU. They came from behind on the road against Clemson and won. They beat Miami, which I know that it's Miami, and we were making fun of them a lot this year, but like they still got the athletes. It's a rivalry game. They look pretty good in that game. I just think that Florida State's got they kind of got the experience, like battle tested. And I just think they have the athletes on both sides of the ball. Not that Louisville doesn't, but maybe this is finally the game where Jack Plummer makes a mistake. Like, maybe this is it. Like, we still haven't really had that, right? I thought it was going to be last week. We kind of had it, but it wasn't a situation like I thought it would be where Plummer had to, like, throw it 40 times for them to win. That's not really how that game played out. So.
Again, if you're asking me in any given one-game scenario, sure, like, Florida State's got a backup quarterback, put him against Jack Plummer, like whatever. Who do I want the other 21 players from? It's Florida State, I think, over Louisville. And I think Louisville's got 21 good other players. I think Florida State's got 21 better players. I would take that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, I've watched the ACC for long enough that I just feel like it's too easy to say, well, yeah, Florida State's better. Like, they're just going to, well, we know they're going to win. They're going to go to the playoff. Like, of course we're going to get to Sunday and just not hear an ACC team in the playoff conversation. So, in any case.
It's fair.
Yep. Give me a second. I need to step away real quick. Hang on.
I mean, I think we're good, Scott. I mean, I don't know if...
Yeah.
We could just wrap up.
Sure.
I mean,
I'll give my picks.
Do you have anything to add? You want to add? Yeah, give your
Sure.
picks for the game first.
I'll take Florida State alternate line -5.5. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win convincingly just because literally they have to make their whole season worth it. Like,
yeah.
Louisville doesn't really have anything on the line. They do. I just feel like they're just going to push for the win there. And final point of the day, Adam Parker pointed out in the chat, we have to give a shout out to the hometown Delaware Blue Hens moving up to Conference USA in a couple of years. The hometown
FBS.
team, former two-time 1AA FCS champion, moving up to the FCS or FBS in 2025. So maybe we'll get some Power 5 matchups in the great city of Newark, Delaware. It's Newark, not Newark. That's how you know you're from Delaware, just like myself. Dad's an alumni. Dad's a football alumni back from the 70s, so he's excited. He texted me back when I texted him the news. He goes, I could never have played there if they were in that big of a school because my dad's not that big. So, cool to see the hometown team, Delaware Blue Hens, moving up to the G5 and whatever that really means, more money for them. They already spend a lot of money on sports, so, I mean, keep spending that money.
Tubby Raymond, is he still alive?
I don't think so.
Okay, I was going to say he'd be rolling over in his grave, if he knew that Delaware was going to be playing some big-time G5 football. But I didn't know if he was still with us or not, so I don't know if that joke
don't think so.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Real quick, let's hit the sponsorships, because I did not talk about Homefield and Vividseats. Right at the end.
Sure.
That's exactly where they want their ads to be read. We are sponsored by Homefield Apparel. It's post Black Friday, it's post Cyber Monday, but that does not mean that you still can't cop some sweet vintage collegiate apparel for the holiday season. Use the promo code GOACC at checkout for 15% off your first order from Homefield Apparel. Again, they had all the deals for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We were hyping them up last week. If you missed out on that, I'm sorry to hear that. But they have a lot of sweet collegiate apparel for you to wear, for you to get for your loved ones this holiday season. All the ACC teams you can think of, even 2 out of the 3 new ones. Stanford not included yet.
Come on, Stanford.
Come on, Stanford. This isn't a Connor and Whitney Homefield fault. Like, they're not at fault for this. This is Stanford's fault. They got to figure it out, get their head out of their ass.
Tree.
It's that dumb tree. They would make the tree exciting from a logo standpoint. Make the tree exciting. Like Wiz Khalifa would. Promo code GOACC at checkout, 15% off your first order. If you are going to the game this weekend, use Vividseats. Vividseats.com. Use the promo code BCPOD20 for $20 off your first order at $200 or more at Vividseats.com. If you're going to the game with a couple people, conference championship game, I'd be surprised if you can get in for under $200 if you want a decent seat that's not in the nosebleeds. So might as well use our promo code BCPOD20 for $20 off your first order of $200 or more. Even if you are not going to the ACC Championship game this weekend and you're going to a bowl game, your team make a bowl. If your team didn't make a bowl, go to a bowl game. Go see an ACC
NBA?
team play in a bowl game. NBA?
College basketball?
You name it. They got tickets for it. Secondary ticket market, right? BC Pod
Yep.
20, $20 off, first order $200 or more at Vividseats.com.
Current get in the door price, according to our friends at Vividseats.com, for the ACC Championship game is $48. So sounds like you could use
Okay.
more money, get a better seat. 'Cause
Yes.
that's just the get in the door price.
Or simply buy more tickets. That's an option too.
Sure.
Buy more tickets in the nosebleeds. Easy enough.
And your Wiz Khalifa joke went right over my head, so that was hilarious.
Joey usually does all this. We're on Facebook. Facebook.com/BC Podcast ACC. Basketball Conference?
Basketball conference.
Basketball. Thank you. Facebook.com/basketball conference. Rate, review. Find all of our podcasts there. We're on Instagram at BC Podcast ACC. Like we mentioned off the top, YouTube.com/@the ACC Football Podcast. We need you all to subscribe. If you like what you hear, like, comment, interact with us. We appreciate all of you who joined us live. If you're watching this back, we appreciate you all as well. So make sure to do all of that. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music.
Amazon Music. Yep.
Yeah, please. Subscribe. Really helps us out. Scott, anything else?
Yeah, no, I think you got it. I think coming up next, we'll obviously going to try to do Saturday Night Fever, I think, after the game. So tune here for after Mike gets off work. We'll try to come and recap the game. Hopefully it's interesting and not a blowout, so it gives us something to talk about. Then in the coming weeks leading up to bowl season, we'll probably have multiple bowl episodes. Last year we had 2 bowl episodes previewing the different sections of the bowls based on when they were being played. So that will preview all the bowl games. And then we're going to try to have some season recaps from the non-bowl eligible teams. So that is Pittsburgh, Virginia, and Wake Forest. So that should be 3. And so that's what December is going to look like, hopefully. So hopefully everyone will stay tuned here.
Yep. Cool.
Okay.
Appreciate y'all for listening. For producer Scott, for Joey, who's tending to a screaming child, which I don't envy him at all because my child screams too. So, R.I.P. Thoughts and prayers to him. For Scott,
T's and
for
P's.
Joey, yeah, T's and P's. I'm Mike McDaniel. We'll talk to you all Saturday night. Recap the ACC Championship. We'll find out definitively on Sunday, but we'll have a pretty good idea Saturday night if we're getting an ACC team in the college football playoff. So we'll talk to you then. Until then, go ACC.